This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
The next day, it's a live event, or 2 days later, against Dr. Death Steve Williams. You mentioned he was starting around the same time you did. I'm curious, when you've got two guys who were sort of new to this, it's not like you have a veteran who can quote unquote call it in the ring. Are you guys able to discuss anything in these days, or is it still communicated through the referees? And, you know, we as wrestling fans have heard that the person who is sort of the senior person or the quote unquote heel, they would call the match. How does that work with two young guys like you and Dr. Death at the time?
I'll tell you how it went that day. Here was the entire conversation. Me to Doc, please don't kill me. That was the end of the conversation. You're supposed to pop on that, Conrad.
I can only imagine.
That was a joke. Not a word was said. Doc came in, he just started rolling, and I just went with it. I had an idea from the referee when he came over and said, hey, you know, this is Bill's project, you know, want to get him over strong. And that's all that you said in those days. I knew not to try to take anything unless he created an opening for me. And in those days, that was the learning to work. If a guy grabs your arm and he stayed there, he didn't advance his position, he meant for you to reverse it or try to reverse it or try to wrestle your way out of it. And if you reversed it and he reversed it back and there was a pause, he's looking for you to do something. It is up to you to have some knowledge in your wheelhouse of something to do in this particular situation. If a guy took a hammerlock and he's staying behind you and not trying to advance his position, then he probably wants you to reverse it. And that's kind of the unspoken language of wrestling. Grab something, the other guy will try to, reverse it. And if the guy blocks you, he's probably not ready for you to reverse it. It's probably that simple.
Wow. Same day, it's a TV taping. Art Cruz and Tim Horner are going to get a win over Marty Lundy and Tom Renesto Jr. A couple of the names I'm not super familiar with. Tom Renesto Jr., I believe, is from Memphis. Anything you can tell us about Tom Renesto?
You know who his dad was? He was one of the assassins.
Okay.
One of the original assassins with Jody Hamilton.
That's awesome.
That's a trivia. I can't believe you didn't know that.
I didn't know that. What about Art Cruz? Anything you can tell us about him?
Just a really nice man. Art was, one of those guys that was pretty average in his look, pretty decent worker at that time. Now, Tom Renesto Jr. was a damn good worker. He wasn't under he wasn't doing the assassin thing or anything. He was just Tom Renesto Jr. But, they made a pretty good team to where we could go out and actually have a pretty decent little match.
Why don't you think Renesto Jr. is a name many of us are familiar with?
If he walked in the room, he could have very well been a sixth grade school teacher. He could have been the Orkin man showing up at your door. He could have been bringing a pizza. Nothing about his look or demeanor or anything else screamed wrestler. He's just very normal.
The only time I remember even seeing him was on an old trading card from Pabst Blue Ribbon and Rack's Roast Beef. It's one of the more coveted wrestling trading cards. And he has, Google him, Tom Renesto Jr. You'll see what we're talking about.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.